Welcome, everyone, to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Durling, and this is an old school episode. It's Matt Phillips and I. Hey, Matt.
Hey guys. Hey Tim.
And it's old school for a lot of reasons, but what's interesting about this, like this is when we do our top albums by the year, our top 10 albums, top 20 albums, whatever. But what's different about this one is that this is the first time that we're talking about albums released in a year that this channel has been on active. It's the first time that we've talked about albums that some of these have been reviewed on here in real time. So, but I thought it would be fun, and it just dawned on me. 2015 is 10 years ago, so full decade has gone by. So yeah, let's talk about some of the albums that came out that year. Matt, I think you had something to add to that.
Yeah, Tim, it's been 10 years, but it's still fairly fresh in my mind. When you asked me to come in on this video, I really wanted to jump in on it because I knew I had a lot of things that I could show and a lot of killer albums that year. And it was quite a year. Like, it was 10 years ago, but it was really different, a really different landscape for music and for culture and politics. Just to give, I won't spend too much time on this, but just to give you an example, way back then we were still on the iPhone 6, which I,
Yeah.
but a couple of really big ones. So of course you mentioned the TVC was really only in its infancy, like
Yeah.
year old at that point. We're talking about 1 year before a certain American president was even considered to be
Yeah.
a candidate.
Yeah.
In 2015, Canada elected Justin Trudeau as our
Yeah.
third prime minister, and he just stepped down on
Fine. Yeah.
the recording. So
Yeah.
one of the really big things as far as music is concerned, we had something called pledge music.
Yeah.
I got in on a few of them here, and we'll talk about that. But this was when record companies and bands were still trying to figure out how are we going to compete with streaming. Like, we're losing all this revenue. How do we bring all that revenue back? Pledge Music ultimately crashed and burned really bad, and almost took down a couple of bands here that we're really into. They aren't ever going to see their money back, but I thought that was a pretty big deal, way back in 2015. This was, so obviously YouTube had been around for a while. All the streaming services had been around, but Apple Music really didn't take off. Like, it was still, people were iTunes and still buying songs, like buying individual songs.
Yeah, and another thing, as we'll get into here, it was just starting to become the norm again for new albums to come out on vinyl, and
Yes.
sometimes even cassette. So that was quite a treat. And there's a couple here that have examples of that. But yeah, I mean, you might think it went, sometimes it all goes by in a blur. But my hair is a lot grayer. But yeah, this channel was less than a year old. It was just a few months in, as the time we're filming this. So it's pretty amazing. But when I look back, I thought, there were a lot of good albums that came out that year. I don't know if you have any honorable mentions, Matt. If you do, let's hear them.
I didn't bring out any honorable mentions.
No, nor did I. So if you don't have any, let's just get into your number 10. 2015.
Number 10 is a double album by Iron Maiden. It's called The Book of Souls. This was actually their 16th studio album. Of course, Iron Maiden's from the UK. This one came out in September. I gotta be honest, I haven't listened to this album a lot since the last 10 years. It's very long. It's actually a double album, even on CD, which is quite rare for them. Now, pretty much every album after this has been almost like a double album. But one of the things that I really loved about this was the packaging, the way that they've reinterpreted Eddie. Looking back at this, I'm thinking, like, so 10 years ago, we had no idea that AI was going to come in and start fiddling with people's artwork. But there's something so unique about this kind of artwork that AI really couldn't replicate.
Yeah.
Of course, the main track, Book of Souls, was the final track on side one. The final track on the very end of the album is something I picked up on Record Store Day, Empire of the Clouds. This is about one of the I'm not sure if it's actually specifically about the Hindenburg disaster, but it's one of the, the flying Zeppelin kind of stories. But it's like a piano ballad on an album that's just really, really long and meandering. I will say I do enjoy it a lot more with headphones on. I tried to listen to it this week just with my regular speakers, and just the sound of it kind of annoyed me. But hearing it with the headphones on and some of the more subtle things was pretty good. And they also did a live album to back it up, the Book of Souls, the live chapter. So it's got a few songs from that album played live. The title track, Great Unknown, the Red and the Black. This is a really nice package. Again, I love all this packaging. But yeah, so that was my number 10, Iron Maiden, Book of Souls.
So that meant that it would have been on what, 4 records or 3?
Yes, I don't own it. I don't own it on vinyl, but I would imagine it would be 4 sides. Yeah.
Pretty expensive set, yeah. Do you think it would have worked better if they'd have spaced it out by a year and made it 2 different albums? Or does all of it belong like thematically?
I don't. They don't have an editor. That's their biggest problem. There's no one really telling them that this isn't the greatest stuff. Like, okay, you're writing music and you're going on, you're playing, and the playing is fine, but they really need an editor. Martin Birch. They have a producer they've been with for a long time, but he's not cracking the whip.
Yeah, I don't know why they're so devoted to him, but anyway, shall remain nameless. Surely they can find another producer. So my number, go ahead. Were you going to say something there?
No, I said you would think. I mean, even some of the band's members have gone off and done side projects, and those albums sound a lot better than the Iron Maiden stuff. So,
don't know. Very set in their ways.
Yeah.
Or is that to say Steve Harris is set in his ways?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
So my number 10 is the exact opposite of what Matt talked about, because this is a really, really short album. And I guess I didn't know about it until it was out, but it's Bryan Adams, and the album's called Get Up, and this came out in 2015. This is just a short little album, but this is the only time he's ever worked with Jeff Lynne. So this means it's got that Traveling Wilburys, Tom Petty drum sound, and you can hear Jeff Lynne on backing vocals on some of the songs, which is kind of weird. So if you can imagine like a Tom Petty, like a Full Moon Fever type album, or a Traveling Wilburys with Bryan Adams singing, that's kind of what this sounds like. But what I like about this is just a fun little rock and roll album. Yep. It's very stripped down. There's not a lot of keyboards on this, not a lot of piano. There's a couple of ballads. It's a very short album. There's 9 songs proper on it, and then there are 4 acoustic versions of songs that are already on the album. So, but I do enjoy it, and I just listened to it again today for the first time in a while. And I don't know how else to say it. It's a fun rock and roll album. When I say rock and roll, I mean 50s, 60s sounding. It's very simple, but it's entertaining. And at this point, that was a nice change of pace for because his stuff has been hit and miss. A lot of it is just very, very mellow, but this is kind of just like the title says, it makes you want to get up. And if I could dance, I would. So that's my number 10.
So, Tim, my number 9 is the second album from an American super trio, and I was actually really thrilled to find this on vinyl one day. This is the Winery Dogs' second album, Hot Streak. This one came out in October of 2015. Really neat packaging here. I think both of us would you agree that they're your favorite album by the Winery Dogs?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The last one was so kind of like the Iron Maiden. There was just way too much content on it, but this one...
We disagree on that. I really liked the third album. The first album kind of went over my head.
Yes, the first album...
But the second album I definitely think is the best of the 3.
Got that one on vinyl and CD. So I assume that you're talk about that one later, so I won't get into too much more. But that was my number 9. I remember us talking about the actual song Hot Streak when we saw the video for that. And the drumming, the little drumming parts really stood out. Some of the...
Yeah, Mike Portnoy said, it was the first time he'd ever done a roll on a rim shot.
Yeah.
Which is kind of neat. Yeah, what I like, I've got a lot more to say about the album, but yeah, it's my favorite of their 3. My next one, number 9 for 2015, is a band that came back strong once they reunited. And unfortunately, as of now, it's been like 8 years since the studio album, but they were putting them out every 2-3 years. This is Europe and War of Kings, and cool artwork. I always loved their logo. And this album, like a lot of their previous albums, comeback albums, was produced by Dave Cobb. It's very much dry sounding album compared to their 80s stuff. There are still keyboards on here. It's still like the well-known. And when I listen to this album, it's interesting because there are great performances on here, but there aren't a lot of. They definitely weren't writing for singles, and there aren't a lot of songs on here that I can think of how they go. But my favorite on here is probably a song called "Days of Rock and Roll." But it's not bad. It's just that songs, for whatever reason, they go for this epic thing, and I don't know. It's kind of stands out for that, and that's why it's kind of low. But I still think it's a good quality album. That's my number 9.
Right on. Tim, the artwork of that reminds me of one I'm going to show here from my number 8. And I talked about Pledge Music earlier, and this is one I did get on for Pledge Music. This is the 14th album, American prog metal band, Queensryche. And this is their second album with Todd La Torre, Condition Human. It's a rare occasion where because I got in on Pledge Music, I got the signed vinyl, and I also got the CD signed as well. Something I did want to say, though, this kind of highlights a little bit of the problem of, Queensryche's trying to survive. They've got a new singer and new energy, and they're really trying to put out quality product that would stand the test of time and match up to everything they've put out. I like this artwork, but man, I owned this album for many, many years, and I did not realize. So it's got all these little things to find. It was printed so dark. I imagine it was printed because printed a little cheaper so they could save on costs. But she's wiping out condensation on the album or on the window, and it's wiping it into the shape of the Queensryche logo. I still can barely even see that on my record.
I didn't know that was there.
Yeah, it's a falling of.
I could barely read the song titles on the back cover too.
I know. I was just like, what is going on here? But all the songs on here, I liked this one better than the first one they did with Todd. Kicks off with Arrow of Time and Guardian and Hellfire. I mean, these are all Queensryche songs. I do really like. I think I mentioned when we reviewed this. Is the song "Just Us" like a really kind of tender ballad?
It's an acoustic ballad. Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah, and then ends off with the aftermath and the title track "Condition Human." Yeah, really, really dug that record. And the fall of a lot of these. I was looking, a lot of these came out in the fall of 2015. So we had a treasure trove of music to listen to.
Do you happen to know who did the artwork for that? I know it's hard to read on there. Because I was curious because I was looking at the Europe cover, and it was done by Paul Tippett and Adrian Andrews for Vitamin P.
Oh, okay.
And it says additional cover artwork Paul Higgins, but I know everything on that album is hard to read. I've got more to say about that coming up, but
yeah, artwork by Joe Helm, J Helm Photography, and then the concept was by Todd La Torre. So inside it's a little easier to read. Some of the lyrics are printed out in kind of hen scratching, kind of really psychotic writing. It's got some nice photos of the band here. A nice one of Michael, but yeah, I was pretty thrilled. I normally like when I get stuff signed, I like to actually be present, actually there, but this was quite a unique concept, 10 years ago to get it.
It doesn't mean as much unless
yeah. The thing I like this artwork, but you can tell that we're shooting for looks good on a little thumbnail because traditionally, like the heading and the name on this way too big for the actual. Maybe it stands out a bit more on the artwork, but it almost looks comical how huge it is. Look on a little thumbnail on your phone, but anyway.
That's something that designers and artists had to contend with, and So it's really funny. We talked about autograph stuff, and you'll remember this. My number 8 is this album, which is
Oh,
signed by the lead singer, and this is the former lead singer of Queensryche, Jeff Tate. This is the first of 3 albums that he put out under the band name of Operation Mindcrime, because obviously, and Matt and I did an extensive episode on this. He lost the rights to use Queensryche as a name. They had, curiously, they had 2 albums come out in 2013 under the name Queensryche, totally different musicians on them. And but of the 3 albums, this one by far is my favorite. I think this is
oh, okay. Yeah.
the best by a really wide margin. It's a concept album about this quote unquote key, this sort of solution to everything, and you must find it and can't let it fall into the wrong hands. And it's like a, it's like a thumb drive.
Yeah.
But you'll notice, I don't know if you can tell on the back here, but the thumb drive has got that fleur-de-lis shape, or sort of like the Queensryche logo that's stuck in this laptop here. It's got some great songs on it. Reinventing the Future is absolutely my favorite. That was a single. Burn is really good. I like Life or Death. I like On Cue, which is one of the slower, mellower ones with some saxophone from Mr. Tate. So yeah, I had him sign this when Matt and I and Chris saw Jeff Tate last year. Yeah, he didn't do anything from this, obviously, because it wasn't, it wasn't a successful album. But I really like this one. This one is my number 8 for the year.
Well, Tim, I still have those in my Amazon cart, and I've been meaning to pick them up. I played the waiting game and waited too long, and I've seen their prices really fluctuate. Pay $20 or $30, $40 for one of those CDs. So I'll pick up those eventually, though.
I think probably you'll find too. There was one pressing, and that was it.
Yeah.
They're all on Frontiers.
Yes, exactly. My number 7 is from a Canadian band. I think this is probably, I've called them my favorite Canadian band of all time. It's not Rush, not that I don't like Rush, but it's Canada's Big Sugar. Now they've been around since the early 90s. This is their 7th album. This one came out obviously in 2015 in the summer, August 28th of 2015. And this one initially kind of threw me off. So the thing is, Big Sugar's always been known to have a hard rock bluesy sound. Their main guy, Gordie Johnson, he plays the classic Les Pauls, and he's friends with Alex from Rush, and this album instead they really leaned in on the Jamaican roots rock. So that kind of threw me off. Their previous album came out in 2011, so it'd been about 4 years. And unfortunately, I did kind of see a little bit of a decline in this band. I've seen Big Sugar live more than any other band, and Gordy got into a little too deep into the Rastafari ganja and smoking the weed and that sort of thing, which was kind of disappointing. So when you put this album out, 10 soul selections with a rootical inflection, I was a little bit worried, to be honest with you. Having listened to this again quite a bit this week, this one actually jumped up a few spots. It went over Queensryche and it went over Winery Dogs to make my 7. So just, I mean, you can tell song names. Side A, Natty Dreadrock, Calling All the Youth, Universal Vampire. A lot of these are really singable songs, but the hard rock is gone from the band. It's just kind of like your singable. If you don't like Jamaican music at all, you probably wouldn't like this record at all. But it's grown on me, and I really like it. My number 7.
So my number 7 would be higher, but I tried to play it a little bit fair, because technically it's a covers album.
Oh, okay.
It's also a remakes album, but it's new recordings. And our good friend Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation is going to cringe because he hates this, these songs, but I absolutely love it. It's Whitesnake, the Purple album. This is actually the reissued version that just came out a couple of years ago. Actually, yeah, it came out 2023. And, if people don't know, this is David Coverdale and his current lineup of Whitesnake, which is a really, really capable lineup. They've got, Reb Beach and Joel Hoekstra, Tommy Aldridge, Michael Devin was still in the band at this point. And it's remakes of songs that Coverdale did when he was in Deep Purple. So it's remakes of songs from Burn, Stormbringer, and Come Taste the Band. And I remember from the time it was announced, I was all in on this idea because I thought, yeah, these are songs that when people think of Deep Purple, they don't think of these songs. And I think they deserve an update as far as production goes. I think they need a wider audience. Now, I'm not saying they've got a wider audience because these were gold and platinum albums in the first place, but I really like the re-recordings of these songs. I don't have any problem with them. I don't have any problem with the originals either, but there are some cases where I love what they did with these songs. My favorite, and it's not even on the regular edition of the album. You have to get the deluxe CD, but my favorite is Coming Home. I love that song. That is so much improved from the Come Taste the Band version. They've almost made a different song out of it. And, you know, Coverdale's had his vocal issues, and, you know, even 10 years ago he was having them, but on album, they got a good vocal performance out of him. The songs are really, like, some cases really, really heavy, like Stormbringer, and great guitar playing. And you know, they completely took the song Sail Away from Burn, which was kind of a funky rock song, and turned it into a really nice acoustic ballad. And yeah, I listened to it a ton. I did a review of it when it came out. That was right around the same time that Martin Popoff put out his Whitesnake book, Sail Away, which filled in a lot of blanks, a lot of stuff I didn't know about this band. So I listen to it all the time still. Whitesnake, the Purple album, is my number 7.
Tim, did you ever pick up the Purple Tour set that he did with the live?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Doesn't really stand up. It's
That's a rough.
okay.
Very live.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of Purple songs on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have that on CD.
Okay.
Yeah.
My number 6, we're almost at the top 5. My number 6 is the 15th studio album by this guitarist, one of my favorite guitarists in the last 10 years, Joe Satriani's Shockwave Supernova. Just an absolute beautiful packaging done by a guy by name Todd Galapo. He's worked with Joe Satriani. He's worked with Sammy Hagar. He's worked with Chickenfoot. So, yeah, just the way that they die cut the packaging on this is one of my favorite packagings that I've ever bought. And it doesn't just look cool. It has this really velvety kind of feel. It feels like a, you know, I haven't been a really huge fan of a lot of digipacks, but, you know, this feels kind of premium. So that was really nice. This whole album's got 15 songs. And again, you know, we always talk about where it's all instrumental. It's kind of hard to explain to someone what these songs sound like, you know, there's no lyrics to compare them to. But I would say this is one of his more eclectic albums. His later ones, like Shockwave Supernova, are a bit more consistently rock, whereas this has a little bit more variety. But he's still, you know, every 2 or 3 years we expect an album from Joe Satriani, like Shockwave Supernova.
Yeah, and we're probably about due. But I know he's busy right now. So my number 6, Matt has already talked about. And it's Queensryche Condition Human. We kind of chipped in on the pledge music. I just got the CD, but yeah, you can't read the song titles on the back. You cannot read them. It's really sad. And you know, somebody like Matt, I'm going to brag him up. Give him a day, and he could have made all of this look better and have it read better against the background. I like the concept. I like what they were going for, but you can't see it. It reminds me a lot of the books that you know, I remember seeing them, you know, when I would take my kids to their doctor's appointments. They'd have these, you know, not Where's Waldo, but kind of, but they'd have these books where you had to find all these different things, and there were different things hidden anywhere, but you can't find anything on here. And you're right. I mean, the band name, not even a logo, the band name and the title are just kind of there. This is actually, now I think they've been on a really good roll. And I'm a huge proponent of the Todd La Torre lineup of Queensryche. This is my least favorite of the 4, but I still like it. This is my least favorite of the 4, but it's still good. I think it runs out of steam. I think there are some, it starts off with a bang, And actually, those first three songs were made available like a month at a time. I
Yes.
remember we'd get them as the Pledge Music thing. I was never a big fan of Selfish Lives, never cared for that song too much. Not really a big fan of Toxic Remedy. And the song Condition Human, Matt and I've joked about this all the time. It still sounds unfinished to me. It sounds like it just gets started and it's over. So I don't know, but there are some good songs on here. I mean, Just Us, yes, really lush, really nice acoustic ballad. And there's another ballad on here called Bulletproof, which is just a straight up power ballad, like electric guitars. Good stuff. It's just not my favorite of these albums. And yeah, boy, I'd love to see a reissue. I would pay for a reissue of this where everything was made much more clear. But seems to me that it was in the middle of the campaign for their next album that everything fell apart with Pledge Music. So this one made it through okay, but yeah, it's unfortunate what happened there. That's my number 6.
Okay. Into the top 5. I know this one's in your top 5. I've got to get this on vinyl someday. This is the 11th studio album by the English band Def Leppard. This is their self-titled album from 2015, and I can't believe this is 10 years old. 10 years ago, I'm thinking, so kind of funny anecdote. When this came, I was still driving our kids back and forth to school. And so I'd put this on. I have the actual CD. And I remember Kate actually liking the very first song because it sort of sounded a little bit, I mean, don't cringe here, but it's got a bit of a Taylor Swift kind of vibe.
I have always wished they hadn't done that. Oh, 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 oh.
So there's some really interesting songs on here. I love the bass groove on Man Enough. I love that they got everybody together to sing parts on We Belong. This one always gives me really fall vibes. When this came out, let's see, this came out, yeah, in November. So that time of year, I'm always outside raking leaves, and I need some albums to kind of put on my headphones and rake leaves for 5 hours. And this is one of the albums that I listen to constantly. Yeah, still really like this one. How do you think this fares, Tim, in like the last bunch that they've put out?
Oh, I think it stands quite tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't talked about it yet, so mine it's up a little higher, but
all right, that was my number 5, Def Leppard title.
So my number 5 is band we're both really big fans of, and there's a new album coming out. So this would have been the 4th studio album and I guess the second sort of reunion album from the Darkness, Last of Our Kind. And it's such a shame that after their first 2 albums, they weren't on a major label anymore. This is one of the few times I've actually bought a Darkness album in a store and I didn't have to get it online. I remember buying this at Spin It. One of the first times that Matt and Will and I, the 3 of us, ventured down, we went to Moncton. We were supposed to see Skid Row. That didn't happen. So then we went to St. John and we went to Frederick. Like, we were all over the place that day. But yeah, I found this. I'd already had it on CD. I've got the deluxe CD too with 4 extra songs. But this is supposed to be like a concept album. The cover has nothing to do with the concept because it's like Vikings and stuff. But it's got Barbarian with that weird the intro and the chorus. There's not much to the chorus except howling. Open Fire is a great song. There's a video for that one. Love Roaring Waters. They haven't lost a step with doing ballads. I think Wheels of the Machine is really good. And let's talk about Frankie, the bass player's vocals on Conquerors. That's really good. Like, Mighty Wings is funny because it starts off with this very 80s synth intro, and then it goes into one of their heaviest riffs. Self-produced, produced by Dan Hawkins, and I'm sure Matt's got more to say about this. He hasn't said it yet, but that's my number 5, The Last of Our Kind.
Right on. Love that record. I'm pretty sure that that's one of Will's favorite by The Darkness too.
I think it is, yeah. We can't get him to much else for them, but he likes that one.
Yes. My number 4 is a really eclectic record that came out of nowhere. Their last record was in 1997, and here they came out, they reformed, they played some festivals, and then Faith No More, we have Soul Invictus, their 7th album from May of 2015. And so far, the final studio album by as far as I know, they're they haven't unreformed, but they've been doing their side projects. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. I did manage. I really love this record, and I did buy it on vinyl as well. I even have the three singles that came out from it. So this is the song "Superhero" reminds me of something that would have come off of "King for a Day." You know, the really chuggy kind of "Faith No More." Um, this one's "Mother Effer." I think we bought this. I found this vinyl single when we were out at maybe Spin It one time.
I think so. Yeah, that looks familiar.
This one's kind of funny. It's a song written by Roddy Bottum, and he's basically just kind of rapping the lyrics, and then the lead singer comes in out of nowhere, Mike Patton, and he's got this "Hello, Mother," and then I also bought the vinyl single to "Cone of Shame." So yeah, Faith No More. This is a heck of an album. I actually wish they had to put the third song on here. Might be my favorite. It's called "Sunny Side Up." It's sort of like he's talking about waking up and cooking breakfast, and yeah, it's a really fun song. I wish they had to put that one out on as a single too. But yeah, that is my number four.
So my number four is an album that Matt has already talked about, and it's an artist that I've never really got into until the last, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years, and I've become a pretty big fan. I still don't have all of his albums, but I remember I went into, well, I guess the closest thing that we have to a local record store, new music, that being our Sunrise Records in Fredericton. And I said, I don't know what they have or what they'll have, but I'll buy whatever I see. And they happen to have two copies of this.
Oh yeah.
Joe Satriani's Shockwave Supernova. This has gone on to become like, I haven't listened to all of his albums completely, like over and over again in equal, measure. Still don't have them all, but this is one of my favorites. I think this album is fantastic. And I do like the packaging, and I'm also not the biggest fan of digipacks, but yeah, it's got this like stencil thing here with his name on it. But yeah, there's some bluesy stuff on here. There's some really mellow stuff, but there's some really cool, like heavy rock stuff on here. Probably my favorite is track 5 on Peregrine Wings. Is that how you say that? But yeah. It's got the dun 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 dun, and it's got a really cool drum beat. I like the title song, the first song, the dun 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 dun. Like, it's great stuff. I mean, he's got I think he's got his usual band. I think it's Aronoff on drums, and not the easiest thing to read here. Oh man, yeah. So Mike
Keeley,
yeah, on keyboards and additional guitar. Marco Miniman on drums. Actually, I don't know if Kenny Aronoff's on this one. Chris Chaney on bass. He's played with a bunch of people. John Cunnabirdie, who's been his long time, worked with him for years. Brian Beller on some of the bass. And I can never say this guy's last name. Vinny starts with C. He's played with everybody. He's played with Sting. He's played with, I don't know how to say his name. Anyway, really, really good. Like to get it on vinyl. And yeah, so far, it's one of my favorites from Joe Satriani, Shockwave Supernova, my number 4.
My number 3. So now I'm really into the heavy hitters as far as bands that I follow. This is the 9th studio album from Welsh band the Stereophonics. This is back when I actually was a bit of a collector, and I'd buy this. So they put out the little digipack. They also put out the if you're gonna give me a digipack, at least make it like a digibook. I like these versions with the hardback, and
yeah,
of course, I found this one I think in PEI on a trip. Someone had bought it and sold it back to the store at a used copy. I don't see their albums ever, especially used around here. So I was pretty thrilled. The Stereophonics have been a really consistent band. They're again putting out albums every 2 or 3 years. Kelly Jones is their lead guy, so he's their front man, their lyricist, the guy that does all the creative stuff. Wasn't really thrilled with this album cover. Keep the Village Alive. It's very kind of dark and but the music on it, fantastic. It's so singable. Kicks off with C'est la vie, um, Song for the Summer, Fight or Flight. So all of these songs, they're if you like that kind of Britpop, jangly kind of music, you'll really like this band. I mean, I've never liked them as much as Oasis, but it's pretty close. Like all of their music is really consistent. So yeah, that was my number three, the Stereophonics with Keep the Village Alive.
So my next one, Matt's also talked about. It's the Winery Dogs with Hot Streak. And, you know, I am not one to go up and buy every single group that, you know, musicians I follow get into, because most of the time they find they don't amount to much. But I was intrigued. I watched the video for the title song. I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, Richie Kotzen's not only is a great guitar, but he's a great singer. He's a great vocalist. And, you know, Mike Portnoy, big Dream Theater fan, Billy Sheehan, you know, Say No More. But again, these guys are in so many different bands. It's like, what makes this one different? Well, I think there is a unique sound here with the three of them. And so kind of on a whim, I ordered this CD and I really like it. And I think it's really song driven. I think the songs are, I can look at these song titles and remember how they go. And that's one thing about their first album. I can't think of how any of those songs go. I just can't. They don't stick to me. Now, the third album, Winery Dogs 3, yeah, I can remember those songs like Xanadu and like, we did a review episode on that too. We didn't talk about this one. This one kind of, it had been out for a while by the time I got it, but I really like the title song. I really like Captain Love. Ghost Town is one of my favorites. I even like the disco song on here called Spiral, which has this really sort of compressed, contained drum sound. Like until the end, when Mike's boom, when he comes in with his actual drum sound, it's really powerful. W Knows a good one. The only song I'm not the biggest fan of on here is probably Think It Over. That's more of a 70s, like late, you know, fooled around and fell in love kind of bluesy ballad. Really doesn't fit the rest of the album, but I mean, you know, for 13 songs and I really like 12 of them. Yeah, I think it's really good stuff. I would like to hear more from the Winery Dog. That's not likely to happen, especially now that Portnoy's back in Dream Theater. But yeah, surprisingly, that comes in at number 3 for the year for me.
Right on. My number two is a band that this is their fourth studio album. I already talked about them. They did actually promote this via Pledge Music, but we both ended up buying it. You said where you got your copy. My copy of The Darkness, The Last of Our Kind. I think I got both of these on Amazon.ca, but I do have the CD version and the vinyl version. For some reason, I don't usually do this, but I kept the plastic on the outside. So you must have convinced me to do that. We just kind of tore it open on the side. I'll probably get rid of that and put an actual sleeve on it.
Maybe it's so you could keep the hype sticker.
Yes. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, very good. But yeah, Barbarian. Open Fire sounds kind of like a cult song.
It does.
Now, did we talk about this was the only album they did with Emily?
No, I figured you would. Yeah, this is pretty cool, actually, because Ed Graham, their original drummer, left after Hotcakes.
Yeah, and so this one was recorded by Dan at the Hawk's Nest studio, and it features Emily, and she's in some of the videos. So I remember her playing outside and a very like so for Open Fire, it's kind of like they're on the really craggy, rocky coast of somewhere in the UK. A really killer video. I wish they made more videos like that. But yeah, number two, I've never stopped loving this record. We try to promote everything that comes out from the Darkness, and I can't find anything to dislike on this album. And you have the limited edition that came out on
it's got like the Christmas wrap on it a little bit because it's got I Am Santa, but it's got it's got Messengers, $1 Million Strong, and Always Had the Blues.
That's right on. So yeah, that's my number two, The Darkness, The Last of Our Kind.
Okay, so my number two is one that Matt's already talked about, and this is the first. I remember being so excited about this. It's the first really, I think, big review I did on Tim's Vinyl Confessions. It's one of my longtime favorite bands. I liked what I was hearing, and I actually through their website. It's the only time I ever did this. A few bands have done this that they teamed up with Classic Rock Magazine to do a special edition. So,
Oh yeah.
Def Leppard's self-titled album from 2015. So I've got the special edition. It's got the CD that does have like a book to digipack, but it's a book. But I also got the standard CD. I got it on vinyl, and I even got it on cassette. That's how much I was into this, and I really like this album. I think this was their first really good album in quite some time, because the last studio album they had done was Songs in the Sparkle Lounge in 2008. That was not a good album. Some Moments, I guess. X, I was never the biggest fan of. And as much as I was excited, like really into Euphoria when it came out, when I listen to it now, there's the songs that I loved, I still love, but the songs that I kind of just liked, they don't stick with me as much. I think this is a pretty good album. I'm not the biggest fan of everything on it. I think Dangerous is pretty classic Def Leppard sounding. I like some of the different sounding songs on it, like Battle of My Own, which is primarily acoustic song that Joe does. And yeah, I think it's cool that you get not only, I mean, Phil Collin has sung the occasional part by himself, like Make Love Like a Man and Miss You in a Heartbeat. But this is the first time on We Belong that you get each of them taking part in a verse. Even Rick Allen gets in on it. And it's funny because Rick Allen sings like he talks.
Yeah.
Like it's like I could tell who that was.
And Vivian, I find.
Yeah. But what you get out of that is really like, well, that's why they sound so good. They can all sing. And what else do I really like on this one? Yeah, Man Enough is a lot of fun. They did that when we saw them in 2019. It's a cool groove, kind of song. I kind of like Invincible. Invincible is kind of like a new wavy, like a Billy Idol kind of song. Joe sings in a really low register, but it's kind of neat. All Time High, kind of like that one. Wings of an Angel, I really like. That's kind of a heavier one. Yeah, I think it's really good. It debuted on the charts quite high, but it fell off. And I remember being disappointed when, I say this at Walmart for $5, not the record, but the CD. I think it's really good. And it was almost my number one.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
I'm racking my brain. I'm trying to think, what is Tim's number one? We'll get to it soon. My number one shouldn't really come as a surprise if you know the music I'm into. This is the second studio album solo project by Noel Gallagher, ex of Oasis at the time. Now he's reformed Oasis. But this is their second album from Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds. This is Chasing Yesterday. This one came out early in 2015. I bought the really nice digipack that has like the slip cover. Of course, I did buy it on vinyl with the big hype sticker. And I found this. He hasn't done a lot for Record Store Day, but in 2015, so it would have been. I think this one came out in the record store when they were still doing just the April Record Store Day releases. So one of the songs he did some remixes. In the Heat of the Moment. This is like a 12-inch vinyl single. So he really leaned into this kind of stuff on his later albums. Like further down the line, instead of in lieu of putting out an album, he put out like 4 or 5 of these things. So this one, I remember I watched something on, I think it was Peter Kerr's channel. He had Reed Little on, and I think Reed's a bit of an Oasis fan too, but he mentioned how much he really liked this album too, and I was kind of impressed by that. You don't hear a lot of people talking about Noel's solo stuff. It's considered a little lower than Oasis because it doesn't have Liam, but really, Noel the primary songwriter of Oasis. So his stuff is going to sound like Oasis if he wants. This one still has a little bit of the Oasis swagger, but it's more leaning into like there's songs on here. I mean, the final song, the Ballad of the Mighty Eye, just that song title could be an Oasis song, but there's other stuff on here that's got it's kind of almost sexy themes and stuff that Oasis wouldn't really go into. But 10 tracks on here, and I did get the version with the 4 tracks with the bonus disc. But yeah, this is still by far probably my favorite album of 2015. Chasing Yesterday.
Cool. I mean, and Noel sang a few Oasis songs, right?
Yeah, and
That's not.
they are in effect still chasing Yesterday. Yeah, you know, with the reunion, right? So you're
Yeah.
not going to hear any Noel Gallagher solo stuff on the formed Oasis tour, I wouldn't imagine. Which is
Um, so my number one, yeah, it's the big mystery, right? This is a band that I was into, and then I kind of got out of, and then I kind of got into again. And so when I got into them again, of course, they'd put out more albums that I'd never heard before. And the story behind this album is that they weren't going to do any more albums, but they owed their record label one more album. So they went in and did it. And they decided that instead of just being a contractual throwaway album, they were going to really concentrate and make the best album they could make. Now, I don't believe that because it's Frontiers Records. Like, how much sway do they have? It's not like they owed Sony a record, but it made for a good story. And it made for a fantastic album that absolutely out of nowhere, I've only heard it for the last like 6, 7 years or so. So it'd been out for 2 or 3 years when I first heard it. And it became my number one for 2015. And that is Toto 14.
oh, okay.
Again, it's quite, I'll hold this up. This is not quite as dark
Yeah.
as the Queensryche one. I would like to get it on vinyl, not just for the album cover, but just so I can buy it again because I think it's fantastic. Unfortunately, because it was on Frontiers, you're not likely to see a reissue of it. But so with this album, you've got the original members of the band that are able to do it. So you've got David Page, who's one of the main songwriters, keyboard player, co-lead vocalist. Steve Lukather on guitar and co-lead vocals. They brought back Steve Porcaro. So there was 3 Porcaro brothers in Toto, and drummer Jeff and bassist Mike both sadly passed away. Steve's keyboard player, he's still with them. So he's back for this album. And then they had Joseph Williams, who's been with them since 1986. He's back on vocals, son of John Williams, the conductor, by the way. So you've got like 4 core guys that had a lot to do with the classic Toto sound. They even, for one song, they brought back their original bassist, David Hungate, who left the band after Toto 4 was recorded to become a Nashville session player, and he was replaced by Mike Porcaro. So Mike Porcaro's in all the Africa and Rosanna. He's in all the videos, but David Hungate was their original bass player on the first 4 albums. He's back for his song. And I just think that the songs on here are so strong and so memorable. And it's got a little bit of everything. It's Toto. So even when they're rocking out, there's still lots of cool percussion. There's still lots of, you hear a lot of bongos, a lot of extra percussion. I like the first song, Running Out of Time. The guitar line on that song reminds me of Satriani or Steve Vai. Like but it's got a great chorus. Joe Williams sounds great on it. Burn is one of my favorite songs. I mentioned this to Matt before we came on, that for some reason 3 of the albums that I've talked about all have songs called Burn, because you've got Deep Purple, like the Whitesnake redoing Deep Purple's Burn. Jeff Tate has a song called Burn on the Operation Mindcrime album, and now Toto have one. Orphan is an awesome, melodic, beautifully constructed melody, but fast. It's got a song called Chinatown, which was originally written, I think, for their second or third album. It's classic sounding Toto, and all of the guys take a turn singing lead, which is kind of neat. I just think this is an incredible album. And I've said this many times, a band this old has no business putting out an album this good in modern day. And this will probably be the last Toto album there ever was, but boy, did they ever go on a bang. So absolutely my favorite for 2015, Toto 14.
Tim, was it that album that actually got you back into the band? I didn't realize you'd kind of
No, I'd kind of gotten out of them, but I found that I was missing. I would get songs of theirs in my head. I don't know. You purge, sometimes you purge stuff out of your collection, and sometimes you regret it, sometimes you don't. And but no, I picked up a one of those when Sunrise first opened in Fredericton. I bought one called, like, Sony put out these collections, and they're just really cheap compilations, but it had like 2 or 3 songs that I like, so I bought it. And so just in the process of uh, completing the collection, this was an album I didn't have. I should say there's also a DVD on this, on the making of the album, which is pretty cool. And it goes into a lot of details about getting some of the older guys back into the band. So yeah, highly recommended. If you ever like Toto, but you missed this one, you won't find it in stores, unfortunately, because it was on Frontiers. It's probably only been issued the once, but try and find yourself a used copy. It is fantastic.
So 10 years on, we're never probably going to get another Toto album there.
For legal reasons, I think, and it has something to do with Jeff Piccaro's estate.
Okay.
I'm not really sure, but 2 years ago, Steve Lukather put out an album called Bridges, which for all intents and purposes is a Toto album because it's got a lot of the same personnel on it. So I think it's one of those things. It's, it's a Toto album under another name. It's like when Lindsey Buckingham and Christine McVie did an album in 2017. John McVie and Mick Fleetwood play on it. The only one missing of the key lineup is Stevie Nicks, but somehow, because of that, they couldn't call it Fleetwood Mac. But it is, one of those things.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What a year, though. I still listen to most of these albums consistently. So
yeah, I mean, I think both of us reviewed this, like we reviewed this album together when it came up. There's one album we didn't talk about was the Hollywood Vampires, the first Hollywood Vampires album. I don't know. I would just as soon have more Alice albums. I liked the idea. It was a fun idea. They did 2 albums, and I liked some songs on both of them, but a lot of covers. And I guess if I'd had to pick another one, that probably would have made the list just by default. But I also have a dishonorable mention, and this is one that I picked up as an impulse buy because a long time ago, Matt and I shot a video based on the Rolling Stone magazine's top 50 hair metal albums of all time. Now, and we had gone over to Sunrise, and sometimes Sunrise Records will have CDs really cheap right at the front counter for that very reason, to see if you'll impulse buy one. And they had this. At the time, it was literally a contractual obligation album, but they ended up going back to the label, Bon Jovi, Burning Bridges. And so on a whim, I bought it, and I think it's just awful. And if I've ever had an album that I've ever just wanted to chuck, it's that one or Dawkins' Shadow Life. But I can't bring myself to do it. But guys, don't think that you're going to buy. I'm not even going to get into it. Yeah, that's my one dishonorable mention, I guess, for 2015. If I shouldn't be too surprising.
Yeah. If I have to throw one out there, I've got it actually on the CD rack behind me. But Brian Wilson did a solo album called No Peer Pressure. It's got so many guest stars on it, and it's unlistenable. I never check it out. So it's one of those in my collection, but I never listened to it. I think he did a what's her name? I can't even think of it. It's so bad. Anyway, yeah.
Is it one of those things where there's so many guest stars, like he almost gets lost in his own album?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he actually did a fantastic album before that sounds just like a throwback Beach Boys album. So this one was that one's called Lucky Old Sun, but this one was a huge disappointment. But really at that time we were really looking at the Beach Boys had reformed for a little while, so when they put out an album, that was fantastic. But yeah, Brian Wilson's No Peer Pressure. Ugh.
Was he trying? Do you think maybe, Matt, he was trying to do like what Carlos Santana did?
Could be.
And had so much success with that one time he had all those guest stars on his album.
All the little press about it was, he was an artist. He heard this on the radio. I just can't see that happening. I think that's the record company kind of pushing that, and there's some connections. And hey, I'll write a song with Brian Wilson. Sure, why not? But yeah. Anyway, let's end on a positive note here. 2015, 10 years ago, doesn't feel like 10 years ago in some ways, but it was quite a different time back then. But
Yeah. Yeah, and what we've talked about here in a lot of cases, a lot of veteran bands still putting out really high quality music. And if you've missed any of these albums the first time around, do check them out. And I'm curious, like, what are your favorite albums from 2015? Comment below and make sure to like, subscribe. Matt, thanks for sitting in on this one, and we'll see y'all later on Tim's Vinyl Confessions.